We do have time for one final panel discussion. We're about to set the table now for the panel discussion. Please feel free to do so. Just a gentle reminder for those of you who have not visited our exhibition, right after our final panel discussion, feel free to do so over next door. As mentioned earlier on, we do have 23 companies showcasing their work this summit, and they come from various industries as well. And for ICDM members, our members lounge are still open for you to explore and experience. And most importantly, we want to hear your thoughts. So do join in the conversation. We're going to be updating our LinkedIn as well as our Twitter live. You can look us up on LinkedIn, and that is Institute of Corporate Directors Malaysia. Our Twitter handle is ICD Malaysia. Join in the conversation online using the hashtag IDS2019. And you would also notice right in front of you, you would have an evaluation form. Since we do have some time right now, we would like to invite all of you to please fill up the forms right now, the evaluation form, as we love to hear from you, your feedback, so that we could better serve you for next year. The good, the bad, the ugly, everything. Do pen it down, leave it at your table, or you can just submit it at the registration counter. But for your convenience, you can just leave it on your table. We'll come around to collect it in just a few moments. Yeah, I see some of you leaving to the restroom. And do be quick about that, because I'm about to bring on stage our panelists, our directors' dialogue. Now, ladies and gentlemen, for our final session for this evening, of course, the topic of corporate governance would not be complete without talking about ethical dilemmas in the boardroom, which we're going to cover right now. What keeps you awake at night? And here to address this interesting topic, I'd like to welcome on stage our moderator for today. Please welcome Dr. Sri Johan Raslan, ICDM board member and former chairman of PwC Malaysia. We have Tunku Afwida Tunku A. Malik, Independent Non-Executive Director of Telecom Malaysia Berhad and Gamuda Berhad. We also have Hakon Brosset Joel. I'm not sure if I pronounced it correctly. Can you please correct me if I'm wrong? How do you say it?
Very, very good.
Okay. Chair of the Board of Directors of Digi.com Berhad and Senior Vice President, Partner and External Relations, Asia of Telenor Group. We're also pleased to have with us Nadia Wan, Executive Director and Group CEO of TMC Life Sciences, Tunku Dato' Mahmud Fauzi bin Tunku Muhyiddin, Chairman of Deutsche Bank Malaysia Berhad, and Dr. Zaharina binti Zahari, Chairman of Manulife Holdings Berhad. I'd like to pass the floor to Dr. Sri Johan to moderate this session. Over to you.
The rest of us are on paper.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Without further ado, let's proceed. I know that my main KPI coming here today is actually to finish at 5:30. So would you be agreeable if we finish on the dot 5:30, no later? You're okay with that? Not earlier. But and another thing, just to save time, I think we've all agreed, so I'll share it with you. To save time, this being Malaysia, I think we'll save about 15 minutes if we just go on a first names basis and no titles. So we'll do that as well. So we'll stick with that. So ethical dilemmas in the boardroom. We have before us a panel carefully chosen, really to cover all the bases. We've got GLC expertise, financial services, non-financial services, telcos of many kinds, multinational corporations. We've got a CEO, that's Nadia there, who's a fairly new CEO, so she has no baggage, done nothing wrong yet. So, and everything therefore is lovely and covered. When you ask us questions later on, please, first names basis, and depending on who you are, I'll probably do the same with you as well, if you don't mind. So the way we're going to run it, now if it's okay with you all, is I'll ask a quick question just to kind of warm everybody up. So just get the juices rolling a little bit. And then go into just a few scenarios, paint some pictures, some scenarios, and see what issues come out. Maybe some advice and suggestions from the panel members as to how to proceed. And then, of course, I'll be looking to bring up your questions as soon as possible. So I am actually looking for people who look quite eager to ask questions and start to wave their hands later on in the session. So leave a lot of time for that. So welcome to possibly the key session of the day. Not that I know Eric, yours was fantastic, but ours is kind of key because this is where a lot of that rubber that started in the morning, hits the road. The big ideas of must do the right thing, etc. Now we're going to talk about how you actually do the right thing in individual situations. That's not easy. So some ethical dilemmas can be big, existential ones about the company itself and its future, maybe small ones, individual ones. Something is not quite right. However, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's all about just get the money in, doesn't matter about ethics, forget all that stuff. You feel free to put that point of view as well. So, we're ready, right, folks?
Ready.
Yeah, fully tuned. Just to start off with, first of all, let's start with Nina over there. Your thoughts about what does ethics in the boardroom, what does it mean to you?
Well, to begin with, ethics is how the moral principles a person actually controls his or her own behavior, right? The values that you have. So when you go into the boardroom, you go in with a set of values that you were brought up with, that you believe in, and then you start off with that, right? Mm-hmm. So okay. You start off with that.
Thank you, Nina. Fauzi?
Short,
Can I
sweet.
follow her and say the same thing?
So you can't just all say what she said. Okay?
No, it's exactly that. So it's a set of principles that we all rely on for good governance moving forward. But it's also, interjected with a good sense of common sense. That's what happens as well. You need an inquiring mind. You need an appropriate level of oversight that goes with it. So it's all built around this set of principles, guidelines that, enshrine some part in compliance, some part in law, and sometimes a lot of in common sense as well.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Oh,
Nadia.
okay. For me, I think ethics is the sustainability of the company. I think that if the ethics and values of the company are no longer aligned with that of society, and I believe strongly that a company only exists in a society because there is a need for it, and if it's not aligned, then eventually that company will be wiped out or disappeared or burn up in the flames of scandal. So I think for me, ethics is really an important responsibility. As a director, I would want to see how the values of the organization are communicated within the board and also how they're actually carried out through the organization. So I actually think it is fundamental for the business sustainability.
Right, thank you.
This is getting more and more difficult
coming
down the line.
There's a lot less to say.
So I agree and subscribe to everything said before me. So let me try to then add a little bit of a different angle to it. I do think that we are seeing that if you don't have values aligned to the purpose of your business, I think you will struggle. And I think one of the things that we spend a lot of time on in the Telenor Group is around who are we here for and what kind of problems are we solving. And then you align your values and the way you want to execute or implement on that according to that purpose. The second thing I think, which is also important, is one thing is to have values on paper. The other thing is actually to walk the talk. And ethics is about actually bringing the principles and your integrity written down in papers into actually doing them in action. And I think that is one of the things that a lot of companies are struggling with is in a way to translate that into real action and make it easy for our colleagues and team members to do the right thing.
Right, okay. Afrida.
I think everybody said everything else. But anyway, yeah, I mean, it's your moral compass and, I mean, the board itself, I mean, I think the tone at the top, yeah, you have to have your, if you start off and you have a whole board full of criminals, then it's a bit difficult. The unethical board, so, you should have a certain code of conduct. You have stakeholders. You are there for a reason. You get paid for something, and that is the moral code, yeah, of conduct. How you behave on the board, and what is the conflict of interest, situations that you're put in. So yeah, it's not easy, but we need to be accountable. It's the accountability, and your values.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, well, okay, so I've got a set of principles. You need an inquiring mind. Some of my writing I can't even read myself. Compliance, law, common sense are coming together. Ethics kind of equals sustainability. fundamental to the success of the business. So the connection of ethics and business very, very strong in what we say here. Values need to be aligned to the purpose of the business. Walking the talk, moral compass, nicely linked up to the kind of logo of the day. I think that's well done, Afrida. Tone from the top, and yeah. So, but I think something you said, Afrida. I mean, Afrida said it's not easy, and it all sounds like it's all so easy, right? To just do the right thing. I mean, what's so hard about doing the right thing? What do you think, Fauzi? You've been around the block. Not to say not to say you and I are older than others, but we are. And so
Speak for yourself.
We have the same, actually. Yeah. I mean, it's not easy, right? You want to maybe expand on that. Is it an easy thing to?
I think that the answer to your question is it is extremely difficult to sit on a board, because really you have to apply the thinking around it. You must have that inquiring mind. You must develop the ability to say no sometimes. And sometimes you need that ability to be able to challenge. And a lot of the time, we don't understand. I mean, the previous sessions, we don't understand half the things that are presented to us, and we just let it go by. Sometimes it's best to ask the most simplest question, because if you are not able to ask the simplest question, it just does not make sense anymore. Something that's not broken down into the simplest pieces.
Mm-hmm.
So, in all the years I've sat on the board, I've seen presentations that actually bamboozle me half the time. They, just go right past my head, and I get lost. And I'm not afraid to put up my hand and say, "Hang on a minute, can you roll back and start again? Because I just don't understand what you just said in the first 5 minutes."
Yeah. So the ability to say no, the ability to challenge, the ability to say I don't understand. Now that's not easy to say that, right?
The thing is, they expect you as a director to be able to say, I understand everything you're saying. They'll ask you, do you understand? You followed me? Are you with me? You with me? And really, half the time, most people just keep quiet and let it go by.
Yeah.
And that's really the problem, right?
So that's the kind of moment of truth. Then,
Moment of truth,
when
yes, absolutely right.
Okay.
Yeah, but just to add to that, I mean, to what extent is you as a director to say, okay, I need more information? So you can say, yes, I don't understand, but yes, and I am, and this thing, yeah, I'm as stupid as I look, yes, but at the end of the day, you're there and you say, can I please have more information to give clarity to this before I make a decision? And very often, many times you will come to a boardroom, you have last-minute papers you have to approve. Everybody, who's had that before? Have
Last-minute paper,
papers
have you heard that?
That you have to go through.
Yeah. And aren't they the most difficult ones?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm just saying, just adding to what Fauzi is saying, that, you have to be able to step back and say, hang on a second, I'm not going to be, number one, bullied into making a decision on this, and I can ask for more information, and you will have to give the explanation until I am comfortable in understanding what I am asked to make a decision on. Mm-hmm. Right? So you can.
Yeah. But don't we have nowadays, when papers come to the board and saying, let's do this thing, then surely there's usually a section that says, oh, the risks. Doesn't that cover it all, normally, the risks thing? Or?
Yeah, and when you get board papers, they have sign-offs, right? Risk has signed off, who signed off, all management signed off, and everybody but saying. So you yourself have to make your own homework. You have to be prepared when you come to the board meeting to understand what the risks are involved in making a decision on a particular issue, for example.
Yeah.
Right? So, it's not just coming to the board, just signing, you're not a rubber stamp.
Nadia, I know, you're probably going to end up sounding like the villain now, So I guess you come with all these last-minute papers and like the risks, are hardly any risks and all this kind of stuff. I mean, do you want to defend CEOs in this kind of situation?
I think a lot of times an effective board functions. I think a lot of us forget that a board in itself is an organization. A lot of us, we're CEOs, and then we go to the board and suddenly, the whole thing about culture, values, how to lead an organization suddenly doesn't matter. And I think that the relationship between management and a board actually has to be a little bit more seamless. So for me on my board, we do have a few things structural. One is a scheduled enforced way of encouraging directors to have questions that the management then will have to answer to. So that gives everyone a safe space that, we expect you to ask questions. And it's a management responsibility to respond to those, because that's why we want you on the board. And I think with the digitalization, it becomes easier, because it used to be that you have your board meeting every quarter, and if you don't provide your answer in that board meeting, you have to wait another 3 months. And I think like right now with the phone, with the email, it becomes a lot easier to have an ongoing, continuous conversation with your board. And I think that a lot of times as CEOs, we also have this pressure of, well, how much information is too much? I'm very much aware of the amount of information that we are expecting the directors to sort of digest. And inevitably, we have late papers, I must admit. I also submit late papers, and it's also because things are happening on the ground, and we want the directors to appreciate that fact. But I think that really working together as a team and not seeing the board or the management as a separate thing, and being cognizant of the fact that we need to function effectively as an organization where the role of the leader, i.e. the chairman, then becomes very important.
Yeah. Okay.
I just want to add one more thing to that. This happened very recently to me as well. They changed, this particular company changed the way it reported its profits in the presentation format, right? And I could see the other two board members, and they're looking at me and says, hang on a minute, can you go back and reconcile this against how you used to report it in the past? And the reality was, nobody wanted to ask that question because of fear of looking like stupid, right?
Yeah.
So the issue with board members is you need to be able to come and say, look, I don't know, just say so.
Yeah, okay. I haven't brought it up here, but in my bag in there, I've got the latest edition of a UK satirical newspaper called Private Eye. Private Eye actually has a lot of jokes in it, but they also have a serious analysis of latest business issues, and it covers one whole page on Thomas Cook. And it lists the nomination committee, the risk committee, the audit committee of Thomas Cook, and they look pretty stupid. Probably, I'm sure they'd rather they were not in that for everybody to read, because everybody in the city of London reads Private Eye. I guess they probably prefer to look stupid in the board, within four walls, rather than in print later, because they look pretty stupid now. And probably, I suppose, their reputations, I would imagine, are quite damaged. If I see the guy, oh, well, you're in Private Eye. Oops, sorry, don't want to mention it. Scenarios. Should we talk a couple of scenarios? And we'll start off with a fairly easy one. Anybody want to add anything before I do that? No? Okay.
No,
You'll have... Afuda, yes.
I think a lot of this unethical conduct is mainly driven by the performance-driven culture, and expectations from all the stakeholders, shareholders, for you to do well every quarter. As the listed companies, you must do well, you must meet targets, etc., etc. So, to the extent where this is your Bible, you've got to meet expectations all the time, and there is no margin, because if so, of course your KPIs will not be met. Your bonus, your pay, your ESOS, your share options are all, this is what mainly, to me, motivates a lot of the, I guess, the management to try to cook the books, as it were. This is the main problem, actually. I mean, if you look at Enron and WorldCom, this is exactly what happened. They had to come up with new, SPVs, entities, of balance sheet items, so that they can actually look to cook the books, to make the financial statements look better, your profits look better. I mean, you can do that even with, with the MFRS, whatever MFRS you have today, you can still do many things, despite.
More and more accounting standards, so even accountants can't understand accounts anymore. Somebody said to me, surely the people who buy holidays from Thomas Cook actually look at the audit report. Well, I think it's about 10 pages long. I had to look at it. I don't understand it. So I doubt whether, Joe Bloggs on holiday in Benidorm is going to understand that.
No, but I don't read financial statements.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. Understood. Now, Okay, a fairly easy scenario one here. Let's have a look at this one. See what this does for you. So we're in a company here, we're the board, and we're a Malaysian company, but we have a fairly massive multinational company has got like, let's say 20, 30, 40% of our shares. Not a majority, so we're not a subsidiary of theirs. And they want us to have one of their staff in to replace a C-suite member. Doesn't matter which one it is, C-suite, so it comes under the board. We look at it and we think, the CV doesn't look right, you know? Not strong enough for what we want. Kind of surprising, we thought they had very strong people. And we get the feeling that maybe it's part of her professional development. You know, you go on overseas tours, you know, to go up the line, you have to have an overseas tour. Maybe this is the overseas tour that they have planned for her with our company. What do you think? What's your, as I said, it's fairly easy, but can be difficult also, depending on your relationship with shareholder. Who wants to kick off with this one? What do you think? CV don't look too good. Shareholder is there. They got a couple of directors on the board say, oh, very good, very good. And you go, no, so good, not so good.
You're looking at
No, I'm not, it doesn't always have to be.
So well, though.
Really? Okay. You know, really, any nomination has to go through a process, be it at the executive. Assume for the moment a C-suite goes to the NC, or nomination committee, or to the NRC, the equivalent of. So really, in that respect, when a name comes through for senior management at the C-suite level, where there is line of sight from the NRC should sit and deliberate against other candidates sitting out there. So you must run a process. If you don't run a process, that whole thing about appointing somebody being parachuted in from heaven knows where, it's a fallacy, right? I mean, the reality, you work for a multinational company. Maybe I could throw this back to you.
I agree, because I think, and it's not only about the process for the particular hiring, it's actually all about succession planning. It starts much longer than that.
That's right.
And I mean, for us, we look at the pipeline, which is when we consider the pipeline over 1 or 2 years. And of course, if a candidate coming from one of the largest shareholders has not popped up in that process, you have all the rights in the world to ask questions around fit for role, experience, why wasn't this brought in earlier, and then follow the due process in relation to the actual hiring. But it starts way before the actual hiring, through rigorous processes around how do you actually groom and retain and attract talent to the company. And the board has a responsibility for that process.
Mm-hmm. Okay, any more on that, or shall I try another little scenario?
I think it's going to be a bit difficult to just parachute anybody into the C-suite because, I mean, in some companies you have the NRC that actually looks at the C-suite level, and like what I was saying about the succession planning, there's always a deputy somewhere. It's not like you can just parachute anybody in. And there is a rigorous process. I mean, unless you're telling me that they don't really care about the process, then it can happen. Mm-hmm. But if in a company that has the internal processes for HR, for every single staff that you have there, then I don't think it shouldn't happen that way.
Okay.
And I think you need to be fair to the candidate as well.
Yeah.
I mean, as a board, you have responsibility for making sure that you get C-suite members into the company that are able and are set up to succeed.
Right.
And of course, if we as a board don't think that this person will be able to succeed or it's going to take way too long time, you have a lot of good arguments to have good discussions with the large owner and potentially also with the candidate itself if it reaches that stage.
So you probably would interview the candidate as well, just to, as long as it's not completely lousy CV. What about board members? So new board members, would you interview a board member? I've heard at least maybe slightly older generation people than the people here today would often say, oh, no, you can't interview board members. They're above that. It's, you have a chit-chat. I've heard people say, you've had a chit-chat with the board members. What do you feel about that, interviewing board members?
But you have a process, right, when you have the board, even for succession planning for board members, it's always very important to actually go through a process of just having a discussion, a chat, a preliminary chat with them prior to actually coming to the formal NRC interview. Mm-hmm. Generally, the chairman and the non-com chairman has a chat with a potential candidate before he's even his CV is actually even brought for consideration, right? Yeah. So I think Because you also want to see whether their ethics are aligned, their values are aligned with the company.
Yeah.
Because it may not be the case. So I think that process, whether it's a C-suite or whether it's the board members or senior management, we have to go through that due process.
I think also, Johan, this has changed, and I very much agree with Nina. I think this has changed. If you look at large-scale multinational companies today, they would go through the same type of process involving executive search. There is, practices within all the large executive search firms today, predominantly focusing on independent and non-executive directors. Yeah. So the process in terms of whether you are going to be interviewed or not, I think many people that are coming to discuss with these companies and with the NRC in the end feel that they have to sell themselves a little bit. Right. So it has changed, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. And sometimes even for boards, sorry, just to add, Chairman, if I may, that board members also want to bring on other board members who think alike, who think like them. But then again, sometimes we need that diversity, we need that change, and that it's always to bring in somebody that will challenge us is also not comfortable, right?
Right.
So even the boards have to change.
Okay. Another scenario, if I may. So we have a board here. We got a sort of very important shareholder, probably the founder. No longer, majority and all that, but still very important. And as usual, we got an independent chairman, but the founder is still on the board now, so sitting next to the chairman in the way it normally works. And he wants to give a cleaning contract for the building to a company controlled by his daughter-in-law. Okay, this is the kind of thing that actually probably didn't need to come to the board, but it came to the board. Don't know why. And actually, had we just ignored it, nobody's ever going to know. We think, unless Stefan's right, and everybody's going to know everything in the end. But we know this. Give you this scenario: the CEO is not happy about it. Okay, and the management also are not happy about it. Now, I don't really want to go into the legalities of this. This is not the point of this discussion. What do we do? What's the rights and wrongs of it? Because everybody says must do the right things. What's the rights and wrongs of this?
But do you then imply that this contract is not big enough to follow the normal procurement process? Is that?
Well, it's only a cleaning. I'm sure it's sort of semi-big. It's down there,
semi-big.
Kind of smallish, but not massive. It's not the biggest procurement they ever done. It's only cleaning the building, for God's sake, but it's possibly big for the daughter-in-law. What about that sort of a thing? It's coming. There's no great tender process. What do you think? It's difficult. We respect the old man. He's sitting there. People don't like to say no because we're Asians, right? No, let's pretend that this panel here doesn't like to say no. In reality, they seem to relish saying no.
Normally, it goes to the board.
Speak up.
Okay, normally it goes to the board, and you will ask. There will be a paper for related party transactions. So this may come under that, and this is the contract, etc. It's a disclosure. This is related to the chairman, etc., etc. And this is the contract. So if everybody's in agreement, that's fine.
Mm-hmm. Any other?
I think
Nadia?
We need to, just because it's a smallish contract doesn't mean that the impact, if the news were to be reported, wouldn't be a very outsized impact. We can see that news can quickly become very viral and they can turn it however you want. So I think that it's really important. It comes back down to the selection and composition and the values of the board itself. Because at the board level, you are the highest arbiter of whatever decision happens in the organization. There's no SOP for you to really follow because you are the one, if you decide to, can override the SOP. And so I think that's where the values of the company and being able to communicate well to the major shareholder also comes into play. Because if this is the direction that the board is heading, then sooner or later down the line, there will be other bigger issues that come. And so how the values of the board come together, the selection of the individuals who come onto the board becomes really important because there is no guideline for the board. You have to decide based on your experience, based on your values, and those values should be aligned. Your experiences may differ, but the values should be the same.
Any other?
I think I just want to build on that. I think it would be very helpful if the board early on, without actually dealing with this specific contract, had the discussion around what kind of standards do we operate on? Do we really, when we do processes, do we have a principle of, going through the regular procurement process for everything that we are buying? In our company, we do conduct integrity due diligence on all our suppliers, for instance. We do that, whether it's a small or a big company. And of course, if you've had that discussion already as a principle in the boardroom, when you get the specific case on your table, at least you have an opportunity to anchor back and say, well, you know, as we have discussed, we will have to go through the necessary steps and the process.
Yeah, okay. So here, you can see the growing theme here is Håkon pulls us back to sort of preempting everything so way earlier. Okay.
Well, at least, you know, you cannot prevent everything by having all kinds of discussions at an early point in time. But it helps you if you have clarity on your purpose. If you agree what sustainability means to you, if you believe and you have a common understanding that, you know, anti-corruption is this, it's not that.
Yeah.
You know, because people come into this with different experiences, and beyond that of legality, you know, you need to kind of have that conversation.
Yeah. Okay. Well, can I ask you, you know, what about we're talking about these kind of discussions on fairly sort of theoretical matters, because it's not about a corruption case now, it's about what does it mean to you. It's not about polluting the river next door, but it's about what sustainability means. When you have packed agendas, and when you have board meetings that can start at 9, and then everybody says, God, I hope we're over by lunchtime, at 4:30 we're still going, you know, and total exhaustion is set in. At what point do you find you have these kind of time and leisure for these kind of discussions? When does that happen in your life, in your worlds? It rarely happens with my...
What do you mean with that?
Well, you know, your board meetings are always long.
Yeah.
Right? And they always seem to last longer than you want them to last. So you think you're going to finish at 2, you end up at 4. And you tend to need to finish the papers. You know, the papers are stacking up and you've got things to be done. So when do you do these kind of theoretical discussions, you know, about what does sustainability mean to you, etc.? I'm not saying you don't do it, but when does one do it?
I wouldn't call them theoretical, because I would call them rather existential. In the sense that if you don't have a very good view on what kind of company you want to be and what kind of problem you're solving for who, and in the way you want to do it, then of course you will run into trouble. And I think the compass starts by understanding both the map and what kind of compass are you operating. And for us, I mean, my experience is that you have to do and embed that as part of your strategy process. You know, sustainability is not an added on, it's not a sugaring on the cake or something that you do Monday or Tuesday of the week. It needs to be an integrated part of your business strategy. Because your customers want it, because your shareholders want it, and because every single important stakeholder that you deal with will actually want to make sure that you stay in business for the long term. Yeah. So for us, it's an integrated part of that discussion. Then do we have off-sites and do we do these discussions where we kind of have a little bit less of a loose agenda? Yes, we do. Yeah. But usually these discussions kind of surface when you have a real case on the table.
I think I'm a big fan of also scheduling things. I'm an organizer, so I sometimes feel like if you don't schedule it, things doesn't get done. So for me and my board, they know that the board, and most of my board is flying in for the meeting, and which becomes even more important. So I tell them, you know, because majority shareholders Singaporean, tell them, we may look the same, but we're not the same. And you really need to have a sense of a feeling of what the company is doing on the ground. And so I schedule them to come in. And in the evening, we may have a dinner with the doctors, because I run a healthcare company, do non-official events for them to get a real sense of the stakeholders, what's happening on the ground. I think that additional points of reference becomes very important when they need to make decisions. And so for me, engagement with the board is not limited to just having a quarterly board meeting. It's also all the other things that you organize, like we have dinners with the doctors, we get them to come for Deepavali's coming up, Deepavali celebration with the staff, we fly them up to come and sense, because then they can really see what's happening on the ground, have a better sense when trying to make a decision.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Now, I really want to get 2 quick scenarios out before we leave, at very least half an hour for questions. So we're getting to the question. I see a bit of anxiety is creeping up there. I want to ask a question. Hang on there. Okay, next one, quickly. Yeah? Okay, I'm a woman on the board. Just joined the board. Maybe I'm the one only woman, or there's another one. Nobody seems, I arrive at this board, look at this board, all old-fashioned fuddy-duddies, and nobody seems to want to raise women on board issues. So it's as though they just want me and no more, now they're on. And they certainly don't really want to talk about women executives. So every time we have a new post come up, it's like 3 guys and we choose 1 guy. I get the feeling I probably have to raise it, if anybody's going to. I'm really not comfy, okay? I have come up the line using, whatever, my own strength of abilities and all the rest of it. And I'm just not a campaigner and that kind of thing. I'm just not comfy with that kind of thing. What do I do? Do I just sit there and, okay, I'm on the board. Hey, we satisfy Tan Sri Zarina's thing where, we are not an all-male board. Then I just sit and shut up. So what do? I know I have to do something, but somebody say something. Speak up.
I am. Am I not switched on?
No, you are.
You are now.
You're a bit soft then, yeah.
Okay. So you're the woman on the board and you come in and you're supposed to actually help other women to come up and help other management also to rise to the top, right? Remember this morning's session where, you wanted to have quotas, you want to have 30% women on boards, but in reality, there's this glass ceiling. You're supposed to crash the glass ceiling, dear,
Okay,
so that the rest of us can get up.
I didn't think. So, by the way, how many out there are board members of publicity companies, even private companies, or things like that? Malaysia Institute of Accountant, the council, these are all boards and so on. Anybody member of such thing? Just put your hand up. Okay, look, everybody is, right? And the women out there, who you know who you are, because I can tell who you are you comfortable, put up your hand, who is comfortable raising women issues on the board? Women, not men. Okay, men all seem to be comfortable. Okay, good. 2 hands, 3, 4, 5. They don't bluff, huh?
Me?
6. Oh, sorry, all of them. Come on, they're chosen for this. Okay, so
Can I
3.
say something?
3 here. Yes, Afrida. Okay, got the point. Yes.
I think, a woman comes in, okay, let's just say me, I'm the first person to join a board. I have been in that position before. So it's not a problem for me. It's quite normal, it's not an issue. But I think you need to bring it offline, talk to the chairman, have private sessions with various directors, sit down with them and get the feedback. What do you think? Is there a reason why there are no women at the top? Is there a problem? And maybe there are no women in the company. I don't know. But anyway, there must be a reason why, or because I have met women who don't actually want to be at the C-suite level, for example. Yeah, I talk to them and say, you're the best person for the job, actually. But they don't want to take on the responsibilities. It's not a problem of this glass ceiling, actually. It's really because they don't want to take on this job. And you talk to them, you try to persuade them to take on this role, but they refuse to do it. So what can you do? That's one example. Yeah. So again, you need to take things offline, talk to the chairman, talk to the board directors. There will be some reason, or maybe some men do not want to put certain names because they're unsure, or they're not, because men and women, they don't, unless you are pally-wally, not so pally-wally maybe, and so men with men, women and women, it's easier maybe for a woman to talk to another woman and ask, whether there are any issues, maybe they have family problems, maybe because they have young kids, there's no crash facilities over there, they don't have they don't have the environment for them to take on that role, for example. So these are things that need to be addressed, that you can bring up to the board level to say, okay, these are things which are not, they don't have these facilities that can at least help the women take on the bigger roles in the company, for example.
Okay.
So I think you can take it offline.
Can I just
you can talk
add?
to
When you have a situation where there's a bias, often there are other symptoms that come.
Where there's a
Bias.
A bias,
Okay.
okay. Which is what Amy
because
mentioned
what I
earlier,
face sometimes is not about women, it's most likely about age. So when there's a situation of bias, there's most likely going to be other symptoms that appear, the kind of comments that they make. And I think that, because I'm in healthcare, in biology, we call it conditioning. So when somebody says something that's not on, I actually call them out on it. And I'm a new member of the board, and in healthcare, 80% of our workforce are nurses who are female, but the board was entirely male. There was one woman, and then I became the second woman. And the kind of comments I remember in the first few board meetings, we were approving, because we were building a new expansion of the hospital, tripling the capacity, we were buying chillers, which are $1 million purchases, because you're buying lots of chillers. And one board, because I was explaining as a CEO, this is the kind of chiller that I want, and he made a comment like, well, I never expected a woman to know so much about chillers. And I turned around and said, well, I think that's sexist. I don't think you should say that. And I definitely think you shouldn't say that to anybody else in the organization. And for me, it's a conviction because I feel the responsibility to actually correct them. They may say it. I mean, probably he said it without meaning any harm, okay? But I feel that it's our responsibility to actually call them out on it and tell them that this kind of behavior in this day and age is not on. So I think that's my perspective, really. I think it's also a responsibility of the board to call each other out.
Calling out, and if we talked about offline, so that a lot of the meeting takes place kind of outside the meeting as well. That's a useful time.
Yeah, exactly.
99% of the time when you're not actually in the meeting.
You have to, it has to happen.
Right, and call it a spade a spade. How come?
Yeah, and I think also, men has an equal responsibility to also help women come on the board. It's not only women helping women and men helping men. We have the responsibility, all of us as directors, to make sure that we have an effective board. And if your customers are 50% women, which they are very inclined to be, given that the population is 50%, you need to make sure that your organization actually reflects the customers you're going to selling to. If not, you're going to be out of business. It's very simple. And I think that when, the bias you're talking about, very easily, as in the boardroom, you can actually start having expectations to the CEO and the management around what do you expect. So when you are evaluating C-suite candidates, you need to have a man and a woman as a candidate. You cannot only show up every single time with 3 men, and then we won't take you seriously. And that's, in a way to go from talking about it and having values to moving into behaviors and actually actions.
Okay. Right. Last scenario, then questions. I look at this. Why did I write this crap? I'm sorry. I do apologize. This will never happen in Malaysia. Sorry. Okay, well, I'll say it anyway. Since I left PwC, I just don't have the backup that you guys have in the street. So I have to do everything myself, and some rubbish comes out. Okay, scenario 3. We're in a GLC. We've had a call. CEO's had a call. Someone would like us to start a big project. As I said, who does this? This doesn't happen. We've got a budget. The budget is set. We've got uses for all our capital. And just equally important with capital is our time of our people. We've only got so many people. So it's all fully allocated for the next 3 years. The CEO seems to be fully on board, and so-and-so seems to be fully on board with this, this new suggestion from upstairs. He hasn't really said who upstairs is, it's a new scenario, so we're not terribly sure who we're talking about. Nina over there has questioned, what about the financials? Because maybe it is as good as or better than what we have got planned. Hey, it might be good, right? Far too early for financials. What do you know? No, too early for financials. And even there is a suggestion, I haven't seen it, the suggestion is the CEO has already had a photo shoot with important people, so maybe it's already progressing down the line, but it's really, really important. And CEO, you can see, is desperate to get this through. And of course, Nadia, it was a last-minute paper, of course. And of course, now that we have electronic, have you noticed, when you have your electronic papers, they can be updated. At least the old days, they would have to physically give you a paper. And you marala, what is this last-minute paper? When it comes in electronically, it goes into your laptop or your iPad without you even knowing about it. You think, maybe I didn't read the paper, but there it is. What do you think? I apologize, guys. I know you've never heard of such things before.
I've seen it many times.
No, really?
I've seen it many times.
Okay.
The first thing, what happened was, in one particular case, what I did was, so it's a last-minute paper. I'd flown in from somewhere, landed in KL, attended this board meeting, and the chairman called me up and says, you need to attend this board meeting. I said, listen, I just got in. So anyway, I arrived there, and all the board members are all sitting around the table, and he says, we need to have a discussion around this because there is this wahyu, lack of a better word, right? A hand-me-down from above.
Wahyu, okay.
To look at this particular project. So I then put up my hand and said, Sir, Mr. Chairman, I won't say even the name because I'm so careful here. Right? He says, I demand the board management withdraw the paper on the basis of short notice. And I want the board to vote on this. The problem was the board did not vote on it. They all went and said, no, let's listen to this. I was the only one who said, no, I don't want to listen to this. And he said, well, you're on your own. What I did was, I closed, it was a file. I had no file. Thank you very much. And I'm good. Can I go out? No.
No, you're not allowed to actually walk out here.
Okay. So that's what I did. There were other cases where I've had, and I think 1 or 2 board members here will remember this, but I won't mention the names. I was with them, particular project, again, you defy. I've seen this happen before. And the CEO had already taken photographs with whoever it was that passed this down.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes, they actually done this. Yeah.
I did that bit about the photo shoot, thinking that's a bit crazy, but it really happened.
This has really happened, yeah. So this kind of thing happens, yeah. Finally, what happened to me in my particular case, I said, I fought and I fought and I fought and I fought. I gave up. When it came for re-election, I said, thank you very much. I'm not going to get myself re-elected. I walked away. That's essentially what happened. If you can't stand up and fight, and you can't win because of sanity and common sense, you then have got to say, look, enough's enough. That's my personal point of view. But it must be not the first response. It has to be at least 10 attempts over a period of about a month and a half or 2 months. You've already got to put up a fight. At that point, when you can't do anything anymore, you need to think about walking away.
Any other inputs on this very theoretical subject? See, I get to it. I start with the small stuff, then we get to the real McCoy. Yes.
Can I just
Yes, you
have
can.
this is a different perspective.
Okay,
actually,
speak up that we can hear
not exactly the same, but I guess maybe if it involves a bank, for example, it's easier for me to respond on something like this. A paper comes in, you know that you don't want to approve, but then there's pressure, perhaps from certain quarters, to approve this paper. So what do? Well, at the end of the day, you have to put in all your CPs. It's like the Putri Gunung Ledang, right? Putri Gunung Ledang, you put all the CPs down that cannot be met.
All right. Okay, yeah.
And then you say, okay.
The conditions precedent.
Yes, the CP, the conditions precedent that has to be met before we can approve it.
Right.
So that's one way.
Okay.
So it is subject to all these CPs, and then you can have your loan.
Right.
For example, that's just one. This because it's something that has happened before. But something like this, I mean, also, I have been in a situation before, and I think Tengku Fauzi is very right that you have to make a decision whether you know that you shouldn't be doing this, and if you carry, or at least you minute it down as such that you don't agree or you want more information, etc., etc. And when the information does come back and you still don't like it, then you have to vote against it.
Right.
And if the rest majority wins, then at least you have your name down as not being for that project.
Well, voting against it, okay, very rarely does a chairman say, let's have a vote. Normally, a chairman, that's all right, let's move on. I mean,
No.
You minute your dissent.
Oh, sorry,
Like
Nadia?
the Supreme Court, you minute your dissent.
How does that work then? When any of you company secretaries here, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but sometimes company secretaries, you can see them minuting, right? In the old days, when they had pen. And then when something controversial happens, the hand kind of comes up. Because they're like, confused, they're not sure what to write on this case, because they're all shouting at each other. How do you make them?
You read the minutes and make sure they put them. You put it inside. They put it inside as such.
You've seen this, so you've all had this. Håkon doesn't, because you've sorted out well before. So far, But let's say in the companies that we've been around the block on, you've all said, I want my dissent minuted.
Correct.
Okay. I suppose just the reason I push that point is just to make sure that when I first started my career back in Malaysia in the early 90s, there was one guy who did this. He's passed away long ago, and he was terribly regarded as very controversial, all the time recording his dissent in a GLC. And later, now it seems to be quite a widespread sort of thing. So it is something you can do. Great, well, on the dot, we now have half an hour left. So we've opened up a wide range of different things, different topics, and we've talked about women on boards. We've talked about real-life matters of public governance intertwining with corporate governance and so on. Okay, any questions out there? Anybody have a question at all? I'm looking for some hands. Oh, lady at the back there.
I have a
Okay, so it'll come on when you speak, yes.
I have a practical question as a business owner. I have a guy who works for me. He brings in a lot of money. He's really the big honcho, but he doesn't take the internal rules and regulations of our company very seriously. He's a bully. But I'm afraid if I'm firing him, that I'm going to lose a lot of money. He's possibly also taking a lot of customers with him. How would you help me with that? How could you help me with that?
Yeah. Ooh, ever heard of that before? Possibly yes. Head honcho, a rainmaker, going to walk with lots of contracts. You think. So what would you do? Maybe you've come across it. You might sacrifice by enforcing your code of conduct. Harassment, bullying, right?
He threatened to leave.
Threatened to leave
He
with.
threatened to leave you.
Yeah. Customers are going to go walk out the door.
The CEO should answer it.
Yeah.
The
What do you
CEO
think?
should answer it.
Well,
One of the biggest things that I do before you even get to that point is actually you have a succession plan. That's what we talked about very much earlier. So if you're an entrepreneur without a succession plan for your staff, so this person that you're talking about controls the clients, controls the contracts, ignores the basic principles of claims, whatever it is that you have, your internal processes, right? You need to have a succession plan for him or her. Sorry, I mean, I use him, a gender, it's genderless, right? I apologize to the ladies in the room. However, if you do have a succession plan in place, you can enter into a process where you have consequence management.
right.
Without that, then you're held to ransom. So my suggestion to you is get a succession plan in place. It will take a while, but get the new successors to start learning about those new clients and the new businesses, as the case may be.
Okay. People who are savvy enough, we've seen this before, to control like that, are often savvy enough to spot the potential threat of a successor coming on board. Huh? And now, let's assume, okay, that's the kind of, Fauzi, you've done that, but let's assume she actually has that problem, Ingrid over there has that problem, and it's a choice. I got to get rid of this guy and sacrifice money, or keep the guy, keep the money, and harassment, bullying, and all that takes place in the workplace.
But the question would be a short-term versus long-term, which of course is in the boardroom very often something that we discuss. The short-term pain of letting go of an employee which is not doing and behaving in the way that you believe is in accordance with your values and the purpose and the way you want to operate, versus the sustainability of having that employee working for you anyway long-term. So you might want to think about taking the pain short-term anyway, just to make sure that you build a model where you can actually have the longer-term growth, which is more sustainable.
Yep.
And I think that personally, I would have done that, because I don't think you should compromise the way that you want to do your business. But of course, I would definitely do a succession plan to make sure that you deleverage some of that risk in terms of top talent in the company.
Maybe to look at it a different point of view, because I deal with doctors a lot. So, they can be very difficult, and they can be sometimes the sole person that's bringing in the income for the company. But I think that, one, the decision of the board should not be motivated by fear. And I think that if we all believe that the organization or collection of minds is better than one person, we shouldn't be held to ransom. And sometimes there are consequences that we don't foresee. For example, we got rid of one difficult individual whom we knew that despite his skill or whatever it is, did not fit with our company ethos. And afterwards, we had many other senior doctors who wanted to join because they said, I couldn't stand that guy.
Yeah.
You got rid of him, now I'm willing to join you. So, you have to stick firm again to what your values are. And sometimes, you could get rewarded with benefits that you didn't foresee, but definitely decisions shouldn't be motivated by fear.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Now I'm going to take two questions, one after the other. So question here. Number 4, you are this lady here, right? Leah Rahman, and then I'm going to go to number 1. I'll come to that later. So before we answer, we'll take the 2 questions, then we'll answer. Typical politician will answer the one that we're most comfortable answering. Leah, you got a mic, right? Okay, it's on.
Earlier this morning, we hear that the chairman of SC mentioned about board activism. I'm very interested hearing the board activism because my understanding of board activism is that the board is brave enough to not only challenge the management, but also to challenge among the peers. But the most importantly is brave enough to challenge the chairman. Yeah, because especially when the chairman is the major shareholder or is a nominated person from the special shareholder. My question is that, can independent directors be really independent in discharging their fiduciary duty, especially in the situation where the chairman tried to bulldoze a lot of things, tried to be very dominating and always telling that, Wahyu, like Tengku Fauzi mentioned, Wahyu from somewhere, and he knows that, and openly mentioned that he's protected by the special shareholder. My question is that, can the independent directors maintain their integrity at the board level at the risk of losing the position as the position in the board? And then Tengku Afida mentioned about setting the tone from the top. My question is that, what if the wrong tone being set by the chairman? Is the independent director or other directors are brave enough or willing to challenge the chairman? And how do you do it, actually? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leah. And now I'm going to get the other question from over here.
Hi.
Let's have your name and your organization.
Hi, my name is Shaliza. I'm from PwC. My question is, building trust is part of what is required to maintain good ethics. How do you, as leaders and board members, yourself communicate the advantage of trust in your organization or to your organization?
Right, more theoretical. How do we communicate trust? Repeat again, Shaliza. Not the whole thing, but the end of it.
As leaders and board members, trust is integral to building ethics. How do you communicate trust to your organization?
Right, okay. How do we communicate trust? So, 2 questions there. One about challenging the dominant chairman who's supposedly connected and protected, etc., and a dominant personality as well. Dominant personality, and how do we build, everything's connected to the trust issue. How do you communicate to the organization? Who's brave enough to take on either of these 2 very difficult questions? Everybody is. Okay, Håkan, we'll start with you, Håkan.
Can I address the last question first?
Good.
Because I do honestly believe that some of the trust deficit that is out there in terms of, related to corporate governance is very often related to saying one thing and doing something else. So, or saying that you're doing something which is really, really good, and then actually doing something really, really that is not really good. And I think the bigger the gap, the less the trust. And I think one of the things that we have tried to focus a lot on is to be very specific about what we are promising that we will do, and then actually going out and do it. Because trust is built in millimeters, as you know, and torn down in meters, unfortunately, and it's shown by action, not by words. So I think that is maybe the easiest way for me to think about how do you communicate that trust is be specific about what you promise to deliver, and then go out and do it.
Okay, Nina.
And it's earned, isn't it?
It's earned, yes.
It's not something that is given freely just by you being there on the board. Trust is also earned just like respect. So if somebody can respect you, can trust you, then you will be able to lead, execute your role on the board better. Yeah? So I think on that, trust is very, very important, and it is earned. It is not given.
I think what to add just to that, one of the things that boards should have today is an item on the board called culture. You need to talk about culture. You need to have that open conversation, put the fish on the table, have that difficult discussion, because it is not an overnight thing to build trust. If you could build trust overnight, we'd be doing it already, right? So this is a journey. Have that discussion. See the way forward. There is never a right answer. It evolves over time.
Yeah.
Just have that conversation first.
Okay, useful. Let's get, are you on this one or this one, Afrida? Okay, let's move to Leah Rahman's difficult questions. Well, we've kind of all avoided.
Yeah.
Yes. The dominant chairman thing.
I think we shouldn't assume a lot of things about chairman if we don't have the inside information here. At the boards that I've been or at the moment, yes, there are certain chairmen who are very, very dominant, and but things are done properly. It's not whatever that needs to be ratified, we do ratify. If things need to be investigated, we do that too. We do not. The independent directors do have say, and we do challenge a lot of. Whether from the chairman or the CEO, we do challenge most of the time. It's not as if things are bulldozed in that respect. But like I said, we don't share so much in terms of information because these are very confidential information. But rest assured that things are. It's not what it seems, or maybe if what you read in the media is not. It doesn't actually happen that way. But yes, if we have the Bursa or the Securities Commission to come in to look at the minutes, it will all be there. We are not afraid of any censure from the regulatory bodies when it comes to a lot of decisions which are so-called bulldozed by certain people.
Okay, but how does one? So can somebody sort of explain to Leah, how do we actually challenge?
No, we do challenge. If there's
and how is it, what tactics do we use in reality in a boardroom situation?
There are written documents. There are emails. These are all you talk about audit trail. Yeah, everything has got to be in place. Otherwise, if the auditors come in, they have a look at what has happened in this company and whether it followed proper governance or not. This has to be in place. So we do put that. We have to make sure that independent directors have to make sure that all this is in place. It has to be. Otherwise, we are all taken to task.
Yep.
Yeah.
But Chairman,
yes.
I think if you have a chairman there and he wants to bulldoze certain things through.
You have to speak up. Your mic is a bit soft. Just speak up.
Sorry. I'm still glued. I'm still glued on. So if you want to actually challenge your chairman, for example, and you have board members, and they're all very strong characters, and you yourself have to realize that you are there in your own right, an independent director. So you have the right to say what you think, and if it's wrong, or you feel that it is against what you believe in or believe what the company, then you should be able to say no, because you also have the right to resign. You can leave. And that is also one way of showing that if I don't agree with you, and if it's wrong for the company, and it's unethical as a board member to do that thing, you can resign. And I would.
Yeah, I think that's important. I have to be prepared to walk away if you don't agree.
A poet once said, it takes less time to do things right than to explain why you did it wrong. And if it goes wrong, you can be explaining for the rest of your life why you supposedly, you challenged, but it didn't work. So document your dissent, document your vote against, ultimate sanction, pointing out over there to actually, to leave the board. That's the answer to that, Leah. So, right, got a question at the back. I have an unconscious bias as well, okay? My apologies. I'm biased towards the people who want to stand up and ask a question here, and then we'll get to a bit of Slido at the end, if you don't mind. So I shall exercise my unconscious bias. But lady in white, I don't know you. Your name, please? Just
Hello?
keep speaking. I think it
Hello, yeah. Good evening, everyone. My name is Elena from Mrs. Razif Abdulaziz and Partners. In today's session, it was more, I think, the consideration here is, or the focus was about board members who are appointed. But I would like to ask regarding the appointment of the board members. And, because it's a crucial thing, and the people that you appoint are very important. And, we keep on talking about all these theoretical ideas of how we are supposed to be more, diversive. Yet we keep on, the people who are in the board members are usually from the same persons or from the same standards. For example, this is the reality of it. Some of the people on the board members are there through their connections, and some from a standard
education level. As mentioned by Mr. Moderator just now, he was quite curious about a certain person who managed to get into the board management, but he was, the credentials were a bit questionable. But in this day and age, is such rigid terms still applicable? And, some people, if they enter the board through their connections, for example, that's why you get board members who have no idea of what's going on. And then they're just there and, there's no conversation, there's nothing, there's no impactful discussion. So in terms of the appointment of the board members, do you think that right now, and given this time and age, that we need to really, really move on and walk the talk and actually take people with proper credentials and people who earn their ways, not through the rigid terms? Thank you.
Thank you, Elena. So, sort of cry from the heart on diversity, of all kinds of diversity, and get away from, I guess, all boys club and networks of mates and school friends. We all went to this school or that boarding school or whatever it is. Yes. Nadia, maybe you're pushing.
Because when I was appointed to the board, obviously a lot of people were very worried, including at the AGM, the shareholders were very worried because at the time I was 34.
Because what?
They were very worried that I was too young for the
too
role.
young. All right.
And I think there are two things. One is don't confuse connection with awareness. The reality is if the board members don't know you exist, you rarely get your name on the list. But it doesn't mean that they have a personal relationship with the person. It's just you don't register on the radar at all. And I think that as a female, there are many things that you can do to get yourself on the radar. Participating in events like this. I attended a lean-in conference, met some people, and then they asked if I could be on certain company boards, things like that. So you don't look at it as, they're male and they're only looking at people who went to school with them. But the reality is, if people don't know you exist, then it's really hard to get on the boards. And secondly, in terms of the nomination process, I think that at the end of the day, you need to prove your value to the board, right? Because this is business, it's not really personal or emotional, and even family businesses, the word business is still there. And I think that if you prove your value and they know exactly why they want to bring you on board and you've proven that, then I think that really helps the case. So there are certain barriers with youth or gender sometimes where people have a preconceived perception of you, but I think that it's also then up to you what you can do about it. And there are things that you can do about it. So you can't just sit there and complain and not do anything and then say, well, I'm a young woman, so I'm never going to serve on the board. Well, what are you going to do about it? Take that as a challenge.
Håkon.
Yeah, I think it's important to understand that diversity, or put diversity in the context of why do we want diversity? We want diversity because we want to make better decisions. There was a gentleman who said that in the side session, and I so agree to that statement. Because if that is true, it all starts with strategy. What is your company going to do? And if you look at that, what do you then have the board which is actually matching the strategy? And based on that, you will start looking at what competencies do you need. And I would claim, of course, that if you do that, you will find that diversity is actually a tremendous strength, but you're doing it because you want to become a better decision-making body to deliver on your strategy. So I think hiring processes as the way that we do it start with looking at, when we look into the kind of like glass ball, where is our industry and company going? And in particular, how do we plan for greater uncertainty and ambiguity? And I think our response to that has been to say, you need people with different perspectives. Because the things that brought our success until where we are today is certainly most probably not going to be what is going to give us the next leg of success. So having people with different perspectives is important. And it starts with understanding what are you going to achieve with this business.
Right, I'm going to move, thank you. Actually, I'm going to move to Slido questions. Now, looking at Slido, they can see it and we can see it as well. I'm struggling to work out which is the key one that we should address. Would it be, if you have to pick one skill and generalize, what do you think is the one thing that is most deficient or lacking in boards today? That third one there. Would you like to go for that? I think we've done the kind of diversity. There's also been a separate session on that. So perhaps we leave the last one amongst the top three. Would you like to, should we go for the third one? No, don't just pick the easiest one, huh? What do you think?
You don't pick the easiest.
Okay. Should we go for
Or do
that
we
one?
go that last one?
Which last one? No, not about the how hard it is, the fear and discomfort amongst men. Yeah. Let's move on to, okay, if there's one, come on now, we're not scared. Okay, if we have to, well, most of us are not scared. If you have to pick one skill and generalize, let's pick this one. What do you think is the one thing most lacking in boards today? Let's start at the middle, and then we kind of work outwards. Nadia.
Oh.
Haha, see us.
Okay. Well, I think it's the people skills. A lot of times we have board members who are professionals, accountants, lawyers, but when you get on a board that, you know, a very big listed company, 20,000 or more than that, 200,000 staff, actually HR issues become very important. And if they have not had that kind of exposure, sometimes it's really difficult. I mean, you talk about things like culture, value. On the surface, if you're a very analytical person, it sounds very like hogwash. If they don't have that conviction that this is something that needs to be looked into, it can.
You mean accountants are not great at corporate culture? Oh my God. Okay. Okay. Wait, Nina, hold on. We'll go here to Afwida.
Oh, okay.
What's the most lacking thing?
To a large extent, I think there is this disconnect between the top level and the tone at the top and the buzz at the bottom, right?
Okay.
They always talk about tone at the top, buzz at the bottom. I mean, there is this disconnect. We don't really know what's happening at the bottom.
So what is the skill then that we need?
Connecting with the middle management and the masses actually really in the company. They don't have a feel for what is happening on the ground, even though you set the tone, set the strategy, set everything at the top, but that doesn't cascade down, and there's a reason for that.
Okay, so we're heading into this territory of the people, the staff in the company as being a key stakeholder. Okay, got that, and it kind of echoes that. Nina, yes, I call upon you.
I deal with a lot of board members who are, of course, very skilled in their various areas, right? Whether it's IT, whether it's finance, whether it's whatever. But so the IQ is very high, but their EQ is lacking, I think. EQ, yeah? So they find that disconnect, as Avida was saying, about, they're very good with the numbers, they're very good with, the technical, what the company does, etc., etc. But I think the people skills, it's lacking, EQ.
Okay. I think I'm really good at it. I told my kids I am very strong on EQ. I seem to get a lot of pushback on that one. Okay, and then we've done the, Fuzzy.
For me, I think it's being able to understand hubris, overcoming pride. When you sit as a member of the board, you think you know it all. I think the board needs to understand itself that we don't know everything. Hubris is one of the biggest problems on the board today. So if there's anything that's a deficit, it's the understanding of hubris and overcoming hubris.
Okay.
I am very much inclined to say to people, and I agree with the hubris part as well, so let me just add one skill which I think is going to be important for the future, and that is your ability to, in a way, manage complexity and live with ambiguity. So you need to build resilience, because in the past, most probably it was a little bit more black and white. Now we're going to move into a future where a lot of the decisions that we will make don't have the necessary 2 lines at the bottom as an answer. So you need to have skills and strength and resilience to be able to live with that ambiguity.
Where are we going to find all these people? People skills, ability to connect and kind of understand the general people down below, EQ, hubris, overcoming pride, and now managing complexity and living with ambiguity. Okay, thank you. That's the answer to that one. Sorry we're not taking the other 3. Because I have a last question. Last question for the board, and we're down to 5 minutes and 51 seconds. And each of you starting from this side now, just to throw you a bit, ending with that side, you're going to give advice to a new board member. Never been on a board before, first time in a board. What is your advice to this new board member?
I would advise this person to actually go and meet as many people as possible in the company, from the different, the different line of business, the financial side. I mean, just try to understand and get a sense of the culture the culture, I think most people, they come in, they expect, there are certain expectations, but those expectations are not met because the culture is quite different to what they're thinking.
Okay.
But anyway, going back to that, it's the understanding, trying to understand the company and the people there.
Okay.
What the
Understand
businesses
company.
itself, the financial. So it's really just spending time with, just spend a week at the company talking to various departments, or the HR, to the finance, etc. Anyway, that's my take.
Okay, thank you. Håkan.
Yeah, so I usually find that when you recruit executives, that they bring with them an executive mindset into the boardroom. So my advice would be, think about how you're gonna, define your role as having the nose in the tent and not the fingers, because you are not the one that is going to be there to do the job, but you need to know enough, and you need to have oversight enough, and you need to understand what value you bring in that equation. And I think that is, in addition to what's already been said about trying, quickly try to understand, and define and reflect on your role. I think that's an important advice when you step in.
Right. Okay. What would you advice would you give to these very difficult doctors who are coming on your board and making your life hell?
I think above and beyond that, like what the previous two have said, is you're joining a team in a sense. You need to understand the team dynamics, and it's also very important to understand what is happening on the ground. So actually, for the directors in our board, we have and often you have directors who join the board, and especially if the business is big with operations in multiple sites, they have not actually seen all the sites or the businesses that you have in different areas, and you're asking them to make a decision on it. So actually, I think orientation for directors shouldn't just be like half a day, this is the CEO, blah, blah, blah. You really need to bring them on board as full member of your team, and they need to be fully orientated about the organization, otherwise they won't be effective.
Like a previous member was talking about, sort of getting stuck in with the nurses on the ward, that kind of stuff. Yeah. Okay. Fauzi.
Well, the easiest one for me to think about is actually groupthink. When you go into a board, the first thing you're going to come up against is groupthink. You've got a whole bunch of new directors who are looking at you as you're this new guy on the board, or new girl on the board, or whatever it is that we refer to them as. You're dealing with people who've been there much longer than you have. And navigating that, if there's a skill that you should learn, is how to deal with groupthink. If you can deal with that, that is, one way is to slow the discussion down so that you can catch up and give a moment of pause when the discussion gets difficult.
Yeah, because often you are the outsider by definition, right? Nina.
Yes, last, save the best for last. Right, but remember your role, and remember that you're on the board now, and you're not management, so stay clear from operations. Be prepared for board meetings, do your homework, read everything, and do your own research and find out more about the company, both domestically, globally, and listen what's the new trends or what the trends are. Have courage, be brave, ask questions from day one, from the first board meeting, and remember to find a way on how you communicate your views in a non-confrontational way. Learn how to say no and do what's right. Get yourself a good mentor, because you've never been a board member before, so it's good for you to get a new mentor, and maybe someone younger than you as well, so reverse mentoring is also good. Stay relevant. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Wow, so with 1 minute to spare, we're just about there, and time for me, I think, to wrap up this particular session, say thank you very much. We've covered a huge range of things, and to actually pick up the points, some surprising things have come up when it comes to, especially this question here, the skill that is needed on the board. A lot of it is around people, culture, understanding of people, and so on. Rather than, I've been, somebody leaves, lawyer just left, let's find a lawyer. Accountant just left, let's find an accountant. So it's more on the kind of qualities of the person than the actual, the CV. So that needs to be put in place. And in terms of the advice, it's mostly about understanding the company, and understanding your role. A lot of self-awareness needed here. Well, ethics, the truth starts with the truth and ends with the truth, somebody said. And it's far better to have the confrontations and the just say no kind of experience, the difficult discussions in the board, the private confines of the board, than to look stupid, as somebody said, in print, 1 year down the line. By the way, it's sort of, the bigger it is, it kind of plays out much longer, so 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the line seems to be the way it works. So it's better to have your discussion on ethics upfront and in the boardroom. We've heard a lot. Thank you very much to Nina, Fauzi, Nadia, Håkon, and Afwida. With that, I'll hand over to whoever I'm handing over to. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
That will be me, and thank you very much to Datuk Sri Johan for moderating the Directors' Dialogue. If you could kindly please stand for a quick photo opportunity before we wrap up today's session. Thank you once again. And to all of our guests, do stay where you are. We do have some closing statement. Do come forward for a quick photo opportunity. Sri, very quickly, I'm going to pass it to you to wrap up today's session. I truly hope that it's been insightful for all of you. I do have some announcements about tomorrow's session, but first, Sri, whenever you're ready. Judging from the looks of everyone's faces, it was quite enlightening, huh? It was a good session.
So, ladies and gentlemen, as they make their way down the stage, I know it's been a long day. I'm going to keep this wrap up to 2 minutes. I've been asked to do a wrap up. Let me just recap the day that we've held and a few key takeaways from me. We started with Stefan's session in the morning about the new world competitiveness, and for me, there were a few things. He said the role of directors was multiple, right? We need to ensure consistency of strategy, help the enterprise connect to society, and build trust and transparency. But in order to do that, directors need to bear in mind a number of things. We need to understand the world economy today, protectionism, inflation. We heard about the definition of a haircut and how much it costs now, whether you have or don't have hair. We talked about business models shaped by technology and consumer demands, and about new business models as well, the likes of Facebook, Amazon, Alphabet, that have created a proprietary ecosystem. And that's a theme we heard from Eric as well this afternoon. And there are businesses these days that are not profitable, but yet seem to be successful. And the last point that I took away from Stefan's session was systemic risk these days is potentially technology rather than the traditional areas like banking. And there's therefore a need for us to understand that there's a time for innovation and there's a time for excellence of implementation as well. We had a plenary session on the new paradigm shift towards ASEAN 4.0. I think there was unanimous agreement amongst the panelists that cross-border directors make sense because they have local market knowledge. They're able to tap onto, hopefully, the Institute of Director pools that we have. But we need to have a fit and proper framework in place. And it also depends on the stage of development in each country. But the benefits of having a cross-border pool is certainly not in question. We then had a couple of concurrent sessions after lunch where we talked about millennials and business startups in the room over there, in this room over here, family businesses and diversity. And the one point for me from my own session that I moderated was we all need to move away from the biases that we have, whether it comes to diversity or any other type of bias that we have. And then we had the pleasure of listening to Eric Vermeulen, and a few key takeaways for me was, again, the point about successful companies now are those that are able to develop platforms and ecosystems. Those are the ones that are most successful these days. And we need to look at how businesses can co-create solutions together with employees. There's a need for directors to understand concepts like IoT, blockchain, artificial intelligence, etc. And interestingly, Eric also talked about the importance of storytelling, to tell the story of the growth and prospects of your company. There's a frightening list of companies that are digitally disrupted, we saw right at the end, and the lesson was we need to upskill all ourselves digitally. I'm not going to talk about the last session because you've just heard from Dr. Johan and the rest of the panel, but I'll leave you with a quote. And this quote was mentioned by Sir David Tweedy. He said that it's not just about the tone from the top, it's the message in the middle and the belief at the bottom. I hope you found today's session useful and you have another full day tomorrow. I'm afraid I will not be able to join you. I've been spared from doing any convening job tomorrow. But back to you, Julie. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sri. Our convener for today. We will surely miss you tomorrow. And truly sticking to your time of 2 minutes. Amazing. And with that, can we have a big round of applause for all of our speakers here today who traveled near and far? Thank you for imparting useful knowledge for all of us. And that wraps up day one of the International Directors Summit 2019. We hope that you've gained truly a wealth of insights relevant to you and your businesses. And we hope to see you tomorrow. Before you leave, please do fill up the feedback form because your feedback is valuable to all of us for improving ourselves to better serve you. Now, for ICDM members, you may continue to enjoy the Members Lounge prepared for you. And for those of you who have not visited our exhibition area next door, please feel free to do so. For those of you who signed up for the Power Breakfast tomorrow, the sessions will start at 8:15 a.m. right at the foyer, at the front of this hall. For those of you who have not signed up, and if you're interested to do so, you may refer to the link in the housekeeping email that was sent to you. There will be 5 topics that will be discussed tomorrow for the Power Breakfast, and they are AI and automation, diversity and inclusion, technology and connectivity, millennial workforce, and corporate sustainability. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, it's truly a pleasure to have all of you here today. Have a great day ahead, what's left of it, and we hope to see you tomorrow at 8:15 a.m. For those of you who are not joining us for the Power Breakfast, the first session will begin at 9:15 a.m.